You've touched so many lives with your work, and from energy healing to inner child readings to helping people reconnect with the divine within themselves. For those just meeting you for the first time, let's talk, from the beginning. So take us back to the day where your story began.
Wow. Began really when our soul first ever incarnated in my, in my own reasoning and belief. So I feel like things that I've carried on in this lifetime, a lot of it is healing stuff that my actual soul needed to do from maybe past lifetimes or just different dimensions of things that I've gone through my soul's evolution. I was lost because even though I had a strong relationship with the divine, I felt alone. I wasn't dealing with any of the issues that I had dealt with, like from childhood, or just what I was going through currently with like dealing with domestic violence in relationships and stuff like that. I wasn't dealing with any of it. I just kind of was like victim mentality, like, why is this all just happening to me? What really sparked me to wake up and to look at myself and to start reflecting and doing inner child healing, which was one of the first things I did to be able to gain some healing, was the NDE. Whenever I got pregnant for my son, I was pretty discouraged because I was celibate for like 2 years. I was trying to do things differently, and I had sex one time and I got pregnant. My doctor at the time even told me, she's like, if you don't want to have this baby, I could totally understand why, because of your health and just everything. You already have two children. And so, what I always encourage people is whenever, especially young women, whenever, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need to decide if you want to have an abortion or not, I really encourage you to seek God, like within your own heart. Because what I did is that's what I did. Because even though in the natural it looked like that's would be the best choice, I went within and I really dug deep in my faith, and God told me, I'm not going to leave you. I'm Emmanuel. I am the God that is with you at all times. If I would have chose to have the abortion, it would have been out of fear because I felt like I couldn't do it. And so I realized, okay, I can do this with God. That's really what got me into like my spiritual awakening, because after experiencing something like that, there's no going back.
Well, that's amazing, Sarah. Thanks for telling that story. And, I'm familiar with the story, and I just loved just hearing it all again in great detail. And I have so many questions about your experience and how it's changed your life, afterwards now, because it's been some time, obviously, since 2017. And also, it's interesting that the experience that you had is very unique. You went into this watery space and you saw the love between a mother and a son, which is, you just had a son, right? And then the brotherly love, which, some bros out there, are getting along the way bros do. And that might be something you're not familiar with, but it's all from that space of love. But I thought what was interesting was they're in water. So what do you think the symbolism is of the water, kind of the portal that we might, because we come into this world through water, right? As we're born, the water breaks and we're born.
That's so beautiful. Whenever you're just describing how when the water breaks, and the water breaks inside the mother, and the water represents the mother, the water represents the nurturing aspects of life, like your emotions. Like it's okay to cry, whether you're a man or a woman, all have that water within us. We come from that water. Most of our body is made up of water. Our DNA constantly being reactivated or even reconfigured with water. Water is a portal. And I resonate with water so much. I know that it's part of my destiny. It started with the fact that I'm originally from Rhode Island, and Rhode Island's called the Ocean State. I've always resonated with like mermaids, Poseidon and Neptune and ocean life. And my favorite movie as a child was The Little Mermaid. Whenever I got into healing after the near-death experience, God started revealing to me more about water and how water is life, and how we could even speak to water and change its makeup, and how it's actually a sentient being, and it holds codes in it. It holds, basically, since the beginning of time, it holds information. Such a strong relationship with the water. It actually is what I use to heal. Like, of all the trauma, like how I've talked to you about, like, the trauma I dealt with in as a child, and then also with domestic violence, and then going through the near death experience. Where I feel the safest is in waters. I feel held, nurtured.
And how long did it take before these healing powers that you now have came out and allowed you to use them?
So I didn't talk about it with anybody at first. I was still very wounded, focused on trying to feel better. And then when I started to process it, I remember telling my mom and then telling my kids. About 4 years to really even like talk to my family about it. 2021 was the first time I talked about it publicly. I was guided by Source to put a video out about my almost abortion story and then about my near death experience. And when I felt Source asked me to do that, I was like intimidated because I didn't want to be vulnerable to the world. I wanted to just protect myself because I had already gone through enough, and I just didn't want to be vulnerable like that. And God was dealing with me about, like, don't you want your story to have an impact? If it could help someone else, wouldn't you want what you went through to actually be for a reason? Just help one person, then I'll do it for that, because I went through so much. If it can help someone, okay. So I created a YouTube channel, and then I went on there in 2021, and I shared my story of the almost abortion story and the near death experience. Started really using my gifts in 2021. I've always had healing energy. I've always been that bright light. Bright lights can attract a lot of dark entities, especially if they're unaware of their light. So I would say that, like, I always had gifts, but I would try to not tap into them because I was scared and I was unaware of certain things. But after my NDE, I was able to really, really hone in and allow God to like take me to another level. But I had to do a lot of like inner work with my limited beliefs and inner child healing and stuff like that. And as I started to work through those things, then I was able to, like an alchemist, these things that have happened and use them for a purpose. So in 2021 is when I started doing energy healing sessions and talking about my story more, doing readings for the collective. I came back, and the purpose is to basically tell my story and to let everyone know that you are more than enough and you can persevere through everything you went through. And there is the other side. There is another side to it. It does take death a lot of the times to get to new life. It could be a spiritual death, a physical death, however you look at it. Things have to end for you to be able to start new. And for me, it took something very drastic.
How is it that after your NDE, now you talk about having a relationship and experience with Source or with God? So, what is that like? Is it a knowing? Do you hear something? And then from that, what of these skills that you have heightened or magnified since then? And how are you using this to help people?
Yes, so I could always see in the spirit. I can hear in the spirit. People have all kinds of like fancy names for them, like clairsentient, clairaudient, and these things. But basically, I can hear in the spirit. I could see in the spirit. I just know. I get words of knowledge. And it's not something that I control. That's how whenever you're looking at somebody who's actually like a real intuitive prophetess or priestess, it's not something that I'm trying to conjure up. These messages come to me, and then I relay the message. I could always see, hear, in the spirit as a child, and it used to scare me. I would try to ignore the spirit when I was younger because I didn't want to deal with it because I wanted to do what I wanted to do a lot of the times. And on top of that, it scared me because I would see like entities and things like that. So, yeah, I have a whole series out called Supernatural Sightings of the Dark Realm that I have 2 episodes out, but I'm going to be putting out more.
What do you think? Have you gone back far enough to figure out if this is tied into your Greek heritage? And, is that the influence on your Mediterranean goddess name?
Yes, it is. Like each year that I dive in deeper and deeper with Source, it's like another layer is revealed about like who I am or, you know, what God has put in me. And each of us have this. It's not like me better than someone else. God has a blueprint for each of our lives and he's put things in us. And a lot of it is tied to our ancestry and things like that. And God will reveal these things to you as you spend time meditating, spending time being quiet, listening, being obedient, meaning it's not saying we don't have free will, but saying, okay, I learned from the last time, let me do things, differently this time. So basically, when I first started my channel, God gave me a new name. He said, okay, your name is Sarah. Name means princess. Sarah means princess. So you're already royalty, God said to me. And I was like, okay. And then God was like, I'm going to give you a new name. I don't want you like Sarah is like when you were a kid, how people know you, like who you were. But like when you go on and you're giving people messages and you're delivering your story, like who are you? And I am Greek heritage. My family is from Athens, Greece. And so I immediately heard in my spirit Mediterranean goddess. And so I was like, okay. So I started to embody this aspect of myself more and more. And as I embodied that aspect more and more levels of healing, more opportunities, more people wanted to talk about the near death experience, more people wanted to talk about inner child healing. So it was opening more. And so I just went with the flow. One day, Source, when I was meditating, spending time, and I was in deep trance out. It almost feels like a trance out. And my ancestors came to me and told me about Delphi. And I started to look up Delphi. And Delphi is either I've had a past life there or my ancestors are from there. But that's where the original oracles came from, the oracles of Apollo. And people would come over from everywhere to ask the oracle, about war, if they should go to war, if they should just for anything. So she was revered. She was honored. She was upheld because she held the wisdom and the knowledge. So Source was already dealing with me about lighthouse. That's why I have a lighthouse tattooed right here about basically on the waters, because we were talking about the waters. And when you're on the waters and you can be lost at sea, but if you can just see a lighthouse, right? Then you know that you're almost at shore. You know that you can get your boat and you can tie it up and you can go into the lighthouse. So God was showing me like I'm the lighthouse. And so when what I'm doing, I might not think it's a big deal, but it's a big deal because I'm spreading light like a rippling wave through the universe, telling about how I was touched by God.
You're really all about water, aren't you? It's just throughout this whole theme here, and then the whole notion of lighthouse and your website, and your services and so forth, and that you have, the tattoo is there, but that's a constant reminder of those that are in peril on the ocean in this crazy world that we're in. Look for the lighthouse and then find the safety of, the cove at the lighthouse and then the love that you'll find there. That is just so obvious how this all ties together. It's amazing. Well, thanks, Sarah.